You're finally awake.
Even if you've never played Skyrim, there's a strong chance you still know this intro.
Hey, you're finally awake.
Since its release a decade ago, this intro has become ever iconic, but it almost didn't happen that way. In fact, during its development, just about everything was trying to stop this opening from happening, especially one bug in particular that derailed the entire thing. And by bug, I mean like a literal bug. In fact, most specifically, a bee.
It starts vibrating like this. We're like, wait, what's happening? And then it just goes boom, up into the sky. Like, what? Oh, come on, what now?
That is Nate Purkeypile, the senior world artist on Skyrim. And while it brings loads of joy and nostalgia for me and many others, to see that intro for Nate, it's a bit of a touchy subject.
How many times do you think you've seen the intro of Skyrim?
Oh my god. Easily hundreds. It's like almost 10 years later now, and I still kind of cringe at the idea of watching it again.
During Skyrim's development, Nate was a part of a team that meet weekly to watch this intro over and over again, polishing it up and making sure the game's first big moment ran perfectly.
Obviously, it was definitely not perfect for a long time, because that cart, it's not just like a predetermined path, but it's actually simulated. So that would mean that cart would break constantly. A lot of people who were not involved would go in and like, oh, I'm going to adjust the road a little bit and make it look a little bit bumpier, but that bumpiness would then cause it to flip the cart over. So one time it's going, that path is totally smooth now. We thought it was fine. And it's going down in the meeting again. And then it starts vibrating like this. We're like, wait, what's happening? And then it just goes boom, up into the sky. Like, what? Oh, come on, what now? So we're like, okay, restart it, see what's going on. It goes fine. Nothing happens. Again, nothing happens. But then, like 1 out of 20 times or something like that, it would just freak out.
Turns out there was a few things getting in the way. First, separate from Nate's team, there was a department dedicated to developing bugs and critters in the game, which was populating the world alongside other teams. But within that team, they were dealing with a problem of their own. Bees are a lootable item in Skyrim, used to make stuff like potions. But there was another bug, and I mean like an actual bug, like a game bug this time, where you couldn't loot the bee, preventing the player from making those certain potions. So to fix that, someone went and changed the collision of the bee, which determines how it interacts with the rest of the world. And well, collision in games can be complicated.
There's all these different situations where you need things to behave differently, like even stairs. They're made up of multiple kinds of collision because you want the person to, like your camera to go up smoothly, but then you want feet to actually like touch every single stair. So there's like these multiple layers of it. There's other kinds of collision where it like blocks your movement, but you can shoot stuff through it. So it's like a pretty long list of like 10 or 15 types. So you always have to make sure you put the right one on.
And one of those many types of collision was incorrectly given to this bee.
One is like for flowers and stuff like that, where you can like run right through them, but you can pick it up. And the other is for like bottles and things that can collide. But bottles, when they get hit by something, it gets knocked over. It has physics. But AI like that, if you push it, it's not going to do anything unless it's something like, the Fus Roda telling it to actually stop what you're doing, like fly off a cliff.
And that's the thing. Unlike other objects like flowers, bottles, or even the cart, the bee has intelligence. It's a thing that moves and lives independently. Therefore, the same principles that apply to stuff like flowers and bottles and all that jazz don't apply to the bee.
So that means it's like this immovable box. Like nothing will push it. But that cart is coming, and it also wants to go this way. So it wants to go this way, and the bee's just minding its own damn business. And so the only way for this to sort of resolve with physics as it continues to try and push further and further with that cart, because it thinks it's further, it just kind of vibrates and, well, it has to go up. That's the only way. And so then rockets up into the sky. That's what ended up breaking the whole game, was like a literal bug caused the bug. And Skyrim would break all the time in all sorts of ways like that.
Oh, it sure does. Even to this day. Even the cart scene is still a little rocky, which I could tell you firsthand from trying to capture it for this very video.
No, this can't be happening. This isn't happening.
While all of Skyrim's problems haven't been fixed, the bee culprit had been found by QA and squashed. Sort of. Because the bee can actually still push you around, and I had no idea. Just look at this dude, getting all up in Lizard Wizard's face. Now, even despite all of Skyrim's existing bugs, I have still put hundreds of hours into that game. I'd even go so far to say that I think I've even grown an affinity towards that game's jankiness. Like, to me, it's kind of become a defining characteristic of the game experience, like a mole or a blemish that you've just kind of accepted as a beauty mark. It doesn't really ruin the game for me, except that bee. That bee. But really, it's incredible to think back on 10 years of this game and kind of see how it's stepped above its wonkiness and not only just become a defining part of my gaming identity, but also kind of set the path for games going forward.
Like, we're now coming on a decade of its existence, and not including the time it took to develop. What is that like? Like, curiously.
It had a great impact on games, so it's clear to me that like it changed the course of games in a lot of ways. Like, I talked to people that worked on like The Witcher and stuff, and they were big fans of the game. You can see like the influences there, and so it's fun to see that impact, because I always liked personally building games that felt more like a world and not just a game. And I think a lot of things have shifted towards that more, and it sounds really obvious now saying it 10 years later, but at the time most games were not like that.
And of course, the memes, because there's always memes.
The meme stuff definitely caught us off guard, so it was pretty funny to see the random things that people would pick up on in the games. Like the arrow in the knee thing is obviously my favorite because it's just so dumb and nobody thought twice about it. Even though we like played hundreds of hours, you just kind of like tune it out. So you don't even pick up that, like, hey, like, it's kind of a weird thing to say. Not expecting people years later to get like tattoos of arrows on their knees and stuff.
I'm still playing Skyrim to this day. So if that means anything, like from its launch, even on the PS3, now to mostly on my Nintendo Switch.
Even 10 years later, this game remains like comfort food to me. It's the thing I play in between other games, or the thing that's permanently on my Nintendo Switch when I go on a flight, or like even the bedside nightcap to like drift off to. A lot of bugs remain in the game, but its environment, tone, and magical world has endured, and as a place I revisit often, even if just for a walk. As for its opening, every time I see it, I know it means the beginning of a new adventure through Northern Tamriel. Thankfully for Nate, well, he doesn't have to look at that intro anymore because he's moved on to pursue game development as a solo indie dev instead.
I think every game should do a blooper reel. I think it would be the best thing ever. I'm keeping videos on my current game of terrible bloopers.
I just know that every time I see it again, or every time I find myself taking a walk outside the ruins of Helgen, that not only will I think about the developers who had to sit through it hundreds of times, but that it almost didn't happen entirely because of a bee.
Hey, you. You're finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right? Walked right into that Imperial ambush, same as us. And that thief over there. Damn you Stormcloaks. Skyrim.